Have you ever flown across multiple time zones and just felt like everything was off? Your heart's racing, but somehow you're also half asleep and you're exhausted, but weirdly wired, and you can't focus and you're kind of irritable, and food sounds both gross and amazing. And then when someone talks to you, there's that awkward delay where it takes, a full 5 seconds to even register the question. That, my friends, is jet lag, where your body is in one place, technically, but your brain is still in another. And it's in those moments when everything feels harder. Now, what if I told you that a lot of us, especially those of us with ADHD, are living in a version of this jet lag nearly every single day, despite the fact that we have not stepped on a plane. We haven't crossed any time zones. Instead, we are experiencing a version of this jet lag because our sleep schedules are constantly shifting. And we're constantly waking up groggy and moving through fog and struggling to think clearly and wondering, why does everything feel so heavy all the time? My friends, this is social jet lag. And if your ADHD brain tends to prefer later nights, but you also have very early work mornings, or you often navigate revenge bedtime procrastination and staying up late just to get some time for yourself, chances are you're probably caught in it. You're probably trapped in social jet lag. And in episode 308 of the I'm Busy Being Awesome podcast, we are shining a light on this sneaky, under-acknowledged drain on our focus and energy and motivation. And we're going to talk about what we can do about it. You ready? Let's get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are taking another look at sleep through a very different lens, a lens that I found to be incredibly intriguing. In fact, when I first heard about this concept of social jet lag, it was the final piece of the puzzle that really helped everything click into place for my brain and finally reinforce a compelling enough why to get me to stick to my bedtime routine. So let's talk about this, and let's start broadly with a look at what I mean exactly by social jet lag. So at its core, social jet lag is this mismatch between our internal body clock and the external schedule that life expects us to follow. It's when our brain and our body want to be on one rhythm, but our calendars or alarm clocks or jobs or kids or schedules or partners are demanding something else. You see, when these two don't line up, the internal and the external worlds, it's like we're constantly shifting time zones. We're waking up too early for our bodies or staying up too late for our schedules, or both. And the result is that we're walking through life feeling foggy, feeling sluggish, feeling a little bit disoriented and off. Now, a lot of us with ADHD, I think, notice this pattern quite frequently, even if we don't realize it. And I think it shows up for two primary reasons. So firstly, a lot of us ADHD brains navigate something called delayed sleep phase syndrome. Now, I have a whole episode on this. It's episode 251. I'll be sure to link to it in the show notes. But essentially, delayed sleep phase syndrome means that those who navigate it are naturally more alert, more focused later on in the day. Okay, our circadian rhythm is shifted generally a couple of hours later. So our ideas start flowing a little bit later. It's why we finally feel like we can lock into the work or do what we want to do later on into the day or the night. Now, the majority of the world wants us to wake up at 6 a.m. The majority of the world runs on meetings and school drop-offs and morning routines and early productivity. So what happens is those of us who navigate delayed sleep phase syndrome end up with this huge gap between when our brains want to sleep and when our schedules demand that we be awake. Now, I do want to make clear that not everyone who has ADHD also navigates delayed sleep phase syndrome, okay? But the people who do have delayed sleep phase syndrome, there's a higher percentage of people who have ADHD, okay? Now, even if you don't navigate that, even so, I think the second way that social jet lag tends to sneak in comes in around the obstacle of revenge bedtime procrastination, a favorite of the ADHD world. Now, I also have an episode on revenge bedtime procrastination. It's episode 252, which I will also link to in the show notes. But this concept is essentially when we pack our days so full, often with obligations for everyone else, work, caregiving, errands, logistics. We pack those days so full that the only time we actually get for ourselves is late at night. And because of that, we tend to push our bedtime later and later, not because we're not tired, usually we are pretty tired, but instead because we are so desperate for a sense of spaciousness, for that time that actually feels like our own. Now, because we are actually pretty drained of energy by that time of day, we tend to do things that are an easier lift, and that allow us to kind of mentally check out, whether that's scrolling TikTok or rewatching Schitt's Creek or aimlessly clicking through tabs, because our brains, they're just not quite ready to surrender to the day, knowing that we have to repeat it all over the next day. We're not quite ready for that. Now, again, the result is the same. We end up going to bed too late for our wake-up time. So we're waking up feeling groggy, and we have to kind of drag ourselves through the morning. And we rely on caffeine or adrenaline or negative self-talk to keep us moving. And when we don't have awareness of what's going on, or we don't have the language of this social jet lag, we can get stuck. And we're thinking to ourselves, why is this so hard? Everything feels so much harder than it should. But now we have the label. We have social jet lag. It is when we are living out of sync with our internal rhythm. And here's what I think is fascinating. Now, most of us would probably acknowledge the discomfort of actual jet lag if we traveled from, let's say, LA to New York, and then we had early morning meetings in New York. Most of us would go, oof, that was brutal. Those mornings felt really early. Now, the thing is, most of us don't consider or recognize the fact that we are navigating an almost identical situation on a nearly daily basis. When we have these huge swings in when we go to bed and wake up between weekends and weekdays, or just a Tuesday to a Thursday. We don't recognize that we're experiencing that same type of jet lag, and it just becomes a common baseline. But just like regular jet lag, social jet lag can impact our memory and our attention and our mood and our digestion and our motivation every day. And I've found that for myself and for the people that I've talked with about this concept, once we can see what's going on, we can actually understand it a bit better and start making those small shifts to support ourselves differently. Now, let's talk about what actually happens when we layer this social jet lag on top of an ADHD brain, because here's the thing. As we know, our ADHD brains are already working so much harder behind the scenes to plan, to focus, to regulate our emotions. There's all of this extra effort happening all the time. And now we layer jet lag on top of that. And honestly, it's, I don't know, like asking our brain to run a marathon and we have ankle weights strapped to our executive functions or something. Because as we know, jet lag isn't just, oh, I feel a little tired. I mean, it impacts everything. It makes everything so much more difficult to manage. Just think about it. Let's start with sleep debt. When we're not sleeping in alignment with our natural rhythm, we're staying up late and waking up early or whatever it is, our brain builds up this sleep debt, which basically means it's carrying this balance of sleep debt that it never really gets to pay off. So what happens? Well, it usually weakens our working memory and dulls our focus and attention. And we tend to get more irritable and impulsive. And we just lower our executive function capacity generally. And because we tend to be problem solvers and we want to just make things happen, we try and fix it. So we reach for the caffeine, or maybe we take a nap that extends from a 17-minute nap into a 3-hour nap, and then we can't fall asleep later. Or maybe we start scrolling for dopamine to try and give our brain anything to get moving. Or we go to the pantry, we find something sugary to try and feel better now and give the brain a little bit of something. And we dive into this kind of productive panic and then ultimately burn out by lunch. And as I always want to remind us, none of this is about willpower or some idea that we just need to buckle down and do the work and push through. Instead, it's our brain doing what it can to try and feel better. So we reach for the caffeine or we try and take that nap to close the gap. But instead of solving for the jet lag, it's really just kind of making that cycle even harder to escape. Because if we drink that caffeine too late or the nap extends into a 4-hour sleep cycle, it's so much more challenging to fall asleep later on and reset that cycle. Let me give you kind of a real world example that might feel familiar to some of you. Maybe we've had a week where everything has just felt off, right? It's really challenging. Everything just feels foggy. We're like, what in the actual world is going on? Every task feels enormous. We can't seem to get traction on anything. And then we look back and we realize, I've been staying up a couple of hours later than usual most nights this week. Maybe we got hooked on some great show, or we fell into some YouTube rabbit holes several nights in a row, or we kept scrolling for just 5 more minutes or whatever. And every morning we drag ourselves out of bed feeling groggy, feeling exhausted. Maybe 1 or 2 of the nights we get to bed a little earlier, but it's that swing back and forth. This is the social jet lag. And today I want to offer that by naming it, by seeing it for what it is, we're building awareness. And if we can give ourselves even a few nights of more regular sleep, I think you'll be surprised by how quickly that fog can start lifting. Now, you may be listening to all of this and thinking, but my brain really loves nights. I actually love staying up late. That feels really good for me. Maybe you're not tired until 1 or 2 in the morning. Maybe that's when you hit your focus groove, or that's when the world is finally quiet enough and all your thoughts click into place. And if that's you, amazing. I mean, if you navigate delayed sleep phase syndrome, or you have a later chronotype or whatever, what I want to say here is that's not a problem. That's not a flaw. It's not a failure. It's not something we need to fix. That's when your body works best. It's when your brain works best. Amazing. Okay. We're not trying to force you to become some 5 a.m. early bird if you're a person who prefers evenings. I'm not here to moralize sleep or assign gold stars to people who are early morning people. No. Okay. Sleep isn't a competition. We can't win at anything. What I want is for all of us to be functioning at the time that works best for us. Because one of the things that I don't think is talked about nearly enough is the regularity. So many of us are taught to focus on the number of hours, right? Make sure you get 8 hours or 7 hours or 9 hours or whatever it is. And that is important too, okay? Don't hear me wrong. For sure, the number of hours is important, but it's not the whole story, okay? You could get a full 8 hours. This has certainly happened to me. I'll get a full 8 hours or 7 hours, but I still wake up feeling like I was hit by a truck. I'm still feeling super groggy. And it's because my sleep schedule was bouncing around from night to night. If we're going to bed at 10 p.m. one night and then 2 a.m. the next night, and then we crash at midnight, and then we're back to 2 a.m. and then it's 9 p.m., that back and forth constant shifting leaves such unpredictability for our internal clock. It doesn't know what to expect. And so your brain stays in this constant state of catch up. So yes, the hours matter, but the timing really matters too, especially when it comes to reducing that social jet lag. And again, if your body prefers a 2 a.m. till 10 or 11 a.m. sleep schedule and your life and schedule allow for that, heck yeah, that's your rhythm. Let's honor it. What we want to avoid is that back and forth crash and burn cycle of staying up until 2 or 3 a.m. and sleeping until 10 or 11 or whatever, and then trying to go to bed at 9 or 10 and flipping it on its head and forcing yourself to get up at 6 a.m. for work and so on and so forth. That constant swing in sleep hours, my word, it is absolutely brutal. The thing is, your brain and your body, they crave that predictability. So whatever your preferred sleep window is, whether you're, as Daniel Pink talks about, a night owl or a morning lark or a third bird, somewhere in between, the question becomes, how can I support myself in making that rhythm more regular? How can I create enough structure to help my brain get what it needs without trying to force myself into a mold that doesn't fit? I want to help us all get into our regular time zone, right? Let's stop shifting time zones. Let's stay in our sleep time zone. That's when we can really start showing up with greater intention. When we can shift from constant jet lag to a more restful rhythm. Now, if this episode has you thinking, wait a second, am I actually jet lagged just all of the time? You're not alone. So many of us are. And honestly, that awareness is huge in and of itself. That might be all you need today to kind of sit with and ponder. And if you're curious for a couple more action steps, y'all know I love a couple of action steps. I'm going to offer a few ways, a few low-stake ways to start noticing what's going on with our sleep-wake schedule without the need to overhaul everything overnight, right? We don't need to cause more jet lag. So what we want to do is support ourselves here with curiosity and gentleness. We all have so much stuff built up around sleep. And what I mean by that is a lot of us have just a giant pile of shoulds that we carry around constantly when we think about sleep, that we should get to bed earlier, or we should follow the right bedtime or morning routine, or we should get more sleep, or we should go to sleep earlier or wake up earlier or be better at XYZ. That list is endless. I have zero intention of adding to that list. Okay. But what I do want to offer are 3 ways that we can start bringing a little bit more awareness to our current sleep situation without any judgment to see if we might want to shift our time zone a little bit of where we want to sleep regularly. So the first step here is to reflect and to take a moment and ask yourself, if I'm navigating this social jet lag, what might my life feel like with fewer days of it each week? Okay, we're not going to getting rid of it entirely, but what might it feel like if we had a couple less days of that jet lag? What would my mornings feel like? How might my focus shift? What might change in my mood or my energy or my ability to follow through? Let your brain play with this for a second. Not as a demand, but just as something to ponder, a possibility. The second suggestion is to track, but not with spreadsheets or anything, okay? Instead, we're just kind of tracking with our mind. We're just making note. When do you naturally feel sleepy if you weren't trying to override it? When do you feel tired? When do you feel most alert and focused? A question that I love, I can't remember which book this came from. Maybe it was Why We Sleep. If I can think of this specific one, I'll link to it in the show notes. But there's a question I love, which is essentially, if you were on a deserted island without electricity or distractions, you don't have to care for anyone else, you have everything you need, but you just don't have the distraction of electricity, when would you go to sleep and wake up? If you could do it whenever you wanted, right? What would your ideal sleep-wake window be? And then how close are you to that ideal right now? And then finally, if you want to experiment with a more regular sleep-wake time, you could try giving yourself maybe 3 days or something of a relatively small window for your bedtime, maybe within an hour. So that way you're going to bed around the same time, you're waking up around the same time with whatever your schedule allows. Okay? We want to stay within an hour-ish time frame to see how that feels. We want to create a little more predictability within that window so you can honor your preferred sleep hours if possible, and then notice what shifts. Not to fix anything, but just to gather some data. We simply want to notice if a more regular sleep-wake time helps reduce some of that feeling of jet lag and perhaps increases your alertness and your clarity during the day. Because seriously, jet lag is miserable. And I'm willing to bet that most of us, if given the chance, wouldn't voluntarily raise our hands and sign up to experience the effect of jet lag, that fogginess, this disorientation, just feeling off every day. Especially when we don't have the benefits of being in some fun new location on the other side. We just have to deal with the jet lag. But as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, since we're not actually traveling, a lot of us don't even realize that we are navigating it, that we've been unintentionally dealing with the experience of jet lag for weeks, months, maybe years. But I'm hoping that once we realize it, that is when things can start shifting. Because now we have the language for what's been happening. My goal for this episode is to offer just one more compelling piece of evidence for the brain. That extra alert of awareness to say, hey, there's a reason why this feels so hard. In fact, it's like you're traveling every day and dealing with all of this jet lag. And there's another way forward if and when you're ready. So whether your brain loves late nights or your schedule has been running the show and you're kind of burning the candle at both ends, or revenge bedtime procrastination has been your only escape lately, you now have a name for what's happening. And with that name, with that awareness, you then get to choose what you need next. And maybe you make that shift. Maybe not every night, but maybe you aim to get into bed within that hour window a couple more nights than before. And as you do, you're better supporting your body's rhythm instead of fighting against it. And that is the start of something different. All right, my friends, that's going to do it for us this week. And if you are ready to take these concepts and apply them to your life, if you're ready to learn how to support your ADHD in a way that works best for you, I invite you to check out today's show notes where you can learn more about how we can work together, both in my small group coaching program, We're Busy Being Awesome, and in one-on-one coaching. Also, if you want to learn my simple step-by-step approach to locking in a routine and making it stick, be sure to check out my free course. It's called the ADHD Routine Revamp. You can tap through the link in the show notes or head to I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/routine to sign up. And finally, if you know someone who's also navigating this social jet lag and they're feeling tired, they're feeling exhausted, if you know someone who could benefit from hearing this episode, would you be a rock star and share it with them? Thank you for helping me get these strategies to even more busy, awesome brains who need them. Until next time, keep being awesome. I'll talk with you soon.